Okay, this video will be for the threading of the Juki 4-thread industrial sergers in the lab. There's different processes for different sergers, so we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit in a minute. But the first thing you're going to want to do is take out the old threads. So if I'm trying to rethread this with a different color, which is typically one of the reasons, the most common reason that you would rethread, I'm going to start by cutting off my old threads, and we don't want to pull our threads through this machine at all because we can risk breaking one of the arms inside the machine or a needle. So instead we're going to run the machine to get those threads out. Okay, so to run the machine, there's an on button down on the bottom, so you can turn on your machine. And you should have a chain stitch coming out of the end that was left from the previous person. So I'm just going to hold on to that, push my pedal, and allow the machine to run until those threads fully come out. That way I'm not having to tear them or pull them out of the machine. So to begin threading, you'll put on your 4 spools of thread. For this demonstration, I'm using 4 different spools, 4 different colors, so that it's a little bit easier to see what's going on once we get down to each line of the machine that we'll be threading. But typically you want 4 matching spools. And then after I've got these 4 put on here, I'm going to take each one up directly to this arm above and thread the whole directly above the spool from back to front. Okay, then I'm ready to come to this next metal bar that's just below. And each of these lines will have 2 holes on them, but you really just need 1 going from top to bottom for this particular setting on the machine. So I'm just going to take each thread, go to the coordinating hole, and thread it top to bottom on that left-hand hole. Then we'll go ahead and move on to the machine. In order to begin threading the machine, I'll need to open up my machine, all of the doors. So the first is the table. There is a hinge under here that you can twist and fold that backwards. The door in the front, slide it over and then forward. This door has a little lever here that you need to push to release that door. In order to get your foot out of the way, your needles will need to be fully up. So if they're not up, you can twist the wheel over here to get those in the up position. And then the lever back here will release your foot. So hold it down, swing your foot out, and then you can let go of that lever. So this is fully, my guard was already up. If your guard happens to be down, you can flip that up as well. So this is fully open, ready for me to start threading. This is the diagram on the inside of the door of the serger. Each model of serger should have its own diagram because the way that they're threaded alters a little bit from each brand or model. So this particular one has 4 threads. You can see the 4 wheels. And each line is color coordinated. We'll have 2 wheels on the right hand side that go completely below. Those are our lower threads. They stay below the plate of the machine, and then we'll have 2 upper threads that stay above the plate of the machine and go to our 2 needles. So the biggest hurdle to threading a serger is learning how to read these diagrams. So you should always have one when you're threading. You'll be welcome to use them when you thread the machine in class. So really learning how to read and interpret those diagrams is the most important part of what we're doing. Okay, so once we get to threading the machine, there's a particular order that these need to be threaded in. And it's not just from left to right or right to left. Instead, we're going to start with our 2 lower threads. So these are the 2 on the right that I told you will stay fully below the plate of the machine. And then we have 2 upper. So we're going to, and those again will go towards the 2 needles and stay on the upper side of the machine. Those lower 2, we're going to start from inside out. So we'll start with this 3rd wheel, work to our 4th, and then come back and do inside out for those upper threads. So let's begin with this one. This one is our lower yellow line on our diagram. There's 2 different yellow lines. One is lower and one is upper. So for our lower yellow line, that's where we're going to begin threading. And in order to thread this machine, you'll need a pair of tweezers. This just helps you get into those small crevices of the machine where your fingers may not fit. And then just a basic pair of shears or scissors to snip the ends of the thread when it may get too fuzzy to be able to thread through the machine. Okay, so I'm starting with this 3rd wheel. So I'm going to go up to my 3rd cone of thread and pull it down. On my diagram, this bar is on our diagram, and if I look closely at my diagram, it tells me for this particular wheel, I just need 1 hole. There's 2 holes for each line of thread. Again, those are for different settings on the machine. For this particular setting, I just need 1 thread on the left for this line. Then I'm going to go down to my wheel. There's a hole above the wheel, and then a hole below. So let's do that upper hole first. Then I'm going to go around the wheel to the right. Make sure I pull on both ends of the thread so that it fully snaps into the center of those 2 wheels. And then thread the bottom hole below the wheel. Now, if I look on my diagram, there's a tube that I need to go through. That is this little black dot here. It's a tube that goes through the metal part of the machine. So I'm going to feed my thread down in there until I see it come out the bottom, and I can pull it through. Now we're ready to go down to the bottom part of the machine. Okay, down below, I just came through that tube. According to my diagram, we're now going to make kind of a W shape with this thread. So there are holes that we'll have to go through right to left or top to bottom that will end up forming a W shape. So on that right upper part of the W, there's this arm right here that has a little hole through it. Again, it's color coded with a yellow dot, so that helps me know that's where I'm supposed to go. So go through that one top to bottom, and then we're going to go down below. This one is 2 arms that are put together with a screw. So that lower one is the green, so we're going for that upper one with a yellow dot by it. And try not to get tangled around any of the other arms as you go along. Okay, so that's that bottom right hand valley of our W. Now we're going to go up to the center peak of our W, which is going to be this arm right here. Go through it right to left. And then now I'm down to this arm. It's one single arm with 2 holes through it. The back hole is the one that has the yellow dot by it. So I'm going to go through that back hole.
So
and then work my way up to this very top hole here, which is the end of our W shape. Okay, again, make sure this thread doesn't get tangled on any of the arms. It should sit to the right of this arm right here, not over to the left. Okay, after I've got that W shape, the next thing I'm going to do is the arm that I can see on my diagram. And this arm has 2 holes in it, and these arms on the diagram are kind of floating off by themselves. That diagram is just blown apart so that you can see each arm and what it looks like individually. But in reality, a lot of those arms either rotate past each other, or they're sitting right in front or behind each other. So it's a little bit hard to understand where we're going if you don't know how to read the diagram. Okay, so to get that arm visible, right now it's up here where my needles are. I need to bring it down into my lower position so that I can get that first hole threaded. So I'm gonna turn my wheel until the arm comes down here. That first hole on this arm is over to the right, so I can only see it if I lean over far to the right. But you're going to go in the right hand side of the arm and it'll come out the front. My thread is getting a little fuzzy, so I'm just going to take my shears and snip off that tip so that I can thread it a little bit easier.
So for me, I've got that. So
there we go.
So on your sleeve drag, I think
should come out the front. Again, don't get tangled. And then to get that second hole on the arm, it's going to go front to back, but it's hidden right now underneath my plate area. So again, I'm going to rotate that until it comes back up to where my needles are. Okay, so now it's up here and I'm ready to thread that front to back. Okay, so now we can see where that arm has come up to the needle area right here. It's rotating behind this metal part, so I don't want my thread to wrap around that. I shouldn't have my thread coming in the front to get threaded. It should stay behind, so I'm going to go behind, grab that thread so it doesn't get wrapped around, and now that it's sitting behind, I can go ahead and thread from front to back that last hole. So on my diagram, that yellow line just kind of stops in the middle of nowhere. That makes me, or that tells me that that's the end of that particular line. When I finish a line of threading, I'm going to pull it up here to the plate and just let it sit and hang out in the back until we're done. Now we're ready to move on to our second lower thread, which is the very right hand wheel, and it is the green line. Okay, so now we're over here on this fourth wheel, and so I'm going to grab my thread again from that top, and on this bar, again, my diagram just tells me I need that left hand hole, so we're just going to go through one of those holes, and then just like we did before, we'll do top hole around the wheel and bottom hole. Pull it tight into those wheels. I'm going to pull my pink thread a little bit so it doesn't get in the way. And then bottom hole. Now I need to do that right hand tube. Okay, now we're ready to move to the lower portion of the machine. Okay, for this green line on our diagram, because of the way they had to blow apart those arms so that you can see each one individually, it makes it look almost like a squared off U shape. but in reality it'll be a big curved U shape that will happen on your machine. So we're going to go from that tube straight down to this bottom right hand arm. Again, they should have the green dots by them to help you know where to go. And then over to this one, the two arms that are held together by a screw, we're going to go through the one with the green dot by it. That single arm with two holes, we're going to go through that front one that has the green dot. And then up to this hole. So we'll have that curved U shape in the end. The last part of this green line is the arm. So just like the yellow line, we have an arm that rotates underneath that plate. So we'll only be able to see the holes as we rotate the arm. It has 3 holes in it. We'll work from bottom to top. So I need to rotate my wheel to pull that arm. This is the one that we're watching right now. And I'm gonna pull it as far to the right as I can. This is the first hole that we're going for, this bottom one. The second hole is hidden under the plate, so we'll have to rotate the arm to get to that one, and then we'll work our way to the third one, which is up here. So this first one, I'm gonna go front to back. To thread it. I want to keep it on the backhand side of that arm, so I'm just going to let it hang out for a moment and then rotate my wheel so that my arm goes behind the plate as far to the left as possible, and I'll see it come out the left hand side of my machine over here. Okay, so this is what it should look like when it's coming out the left-hand side of my machine. You can see right here, this is the arm, and this is the particular hole that we're going for. So like I said, I want to keep my thread on the backhand side since we just went out the back of the arm. So I'm going to go back here behind, grab my thread so that it stays on the backhand side of that arm. The second hole we have to do back to front so that we don't wrap it around the arm. Excuse me. There we go. And now I'm going to let it hang out here, and I'll rotate my wheel so that that arm goes back out to the right hand side of my machine. Okay, so now I've got it coming out this side. That hole at the top is the last one that we're going for. So again, underneath my plate, I'm going to grab my thread, pull it back to the right hand side, double check that it's not getting tangled on anything, and then thread that front to back. Oops, got a little wrapped around the arm. Okay, let me fix that. Okay, and then again, when I'm done with the line, this is the last hole for the green line. So I'm going to bring my thread up to the surface behind this metal piece, bring it up to the surface of the plate, and let it hang out here at the back. Now we're ready to do our 2 upper threads. Starting on our 2 upper threads, again, we're going to work from middle out. So this one is a yellow line. I can see it by that yellow dot on the wheel. And that's the one we're going to start with. On this one, if I look at my diagram closely, it tells me that I need both holes on this bar. So I'm going to go from right to left, top to bottom, and go through both of those holes. Then top hole above the wheel, around the wheel, and bottom hole. Okay, then it's going to come straight over. Like I said, this one's staying all the way up top. So there's a little padded area it will brush up against and sit on. And now we're going to go to this bar and hook area. There's a bar on either side and a hook in the center. So those are 3 areas that we need to go through in once. Because they're so close together, it's easiest just to line them up and get through all 3 at once. So in order to line these up, I need to pull that hook into the forward position. So turn my wheel and get that hook to come as far forward as possible. Excuse me. This is a double layer hook, kind of like a double-decker bus. The bottom layer is the one that we're using right now. The top layer is the one that we'll use for the next line, the red line we'll get to in a minute. So line up that bottom layer with the 2 bottom holes. And then I should be able to put my thread from right to left through all 3 at once. Okay, so get through all 3 of those. Then I'm going to go to the yellow dot that's on the right hand side just above my needle. Now I'm going to pull my wheels up. So again, pull my needles up, excuse me. So turn your wheel. There is a screw right here with a hook on either side. So right now I'm working on that right hand side. So I'm going to go over there, make sure I get behind that hook. It's really 2 layers of metal, a front and a back, and you're trying to get in between those 2 layers, but it'll hook around the right to get in there. And then there's an elongated hole just above my needle that I need to go through, front to back. And then I'm ready to do the eye of my needle. Again, this one is front to back. Our single needle industrial machines that we've been using are left to right, but this one is one of the exceptions. Since you have 2 needles, they are lined up front to back. So go through that right hand needle, and then again just let the tail sit at the back. Now we're ready to do that red line. This one again tells me I need both holes on the bar at the top. So I'm going to go right to left through both of them, or right to left, top to bottom, excuse me. Top hole around the wheels again, snap them into place. Bottom hole, and then we're going to do that hook area again. So twist your wheel, get that hook all the way into the forward position so that that top deck of the hook is in line with the top holes, and go through all 3 at once. There we go. Now to the left hand red hole. Pull my needles up with my wheel. I'm going to go through that left hand hook on the left hand side of that screw that we talked about. And then through the elongated hole. Got tangled around another piece of the machine, excuse me. Okay, and then through the eye of the needle. My thread is getting a little fuzzy. There we go. Okay, so now we are fully threaded. We're ready to shut our machine up, close all the doors, and then we'll talk about how to stitch on this machine. Okay, to close the machine, I usually start with this front door. It's on a spring, so as soon as you just push it up, it will snap back into place. This one over here on the left, you want to make sure that all 4 of your tails are out of the way so that they don't get caught in the door. And then snap that one back into place. Bring my foot over, and I'm going to hold down that lever, put it into place. If your needles are down, you won't be able to get your foot all the way in there. So double check that your needles are up, put your foot into place, and then release that lever to lock it in. Okay, and then last is the door to our table. Get that closed and latched, and we're ready to start stitching. For this one, again, you're just gonna let the machine run to get the chain stitch started. So let that run, and once you have a chain coming out the side, you're ready to start stitching. So on this one, when we stitch, we typically don't pick up the foot. There is a metal pedal down at the bottom to pick up the foot if you need to, if you have a thicker thread, or thicker fabric, excuse me. But most of the time we should just be able to put our fabric right at the front of the foot, and as we run the machine, it will pull it in. Now, where to line this up? On this machine, this metal part that we were avoiding as we threaded earlier, right next to the foot, it goes up and down as you stitch. That is actually a blade, and it cuts off the edge of your fabric. It's kind of self-preservation for the machine, so that, because if you shove too much fabric in there at once, you can easily break the parts of the machine. So it keeps the machine protected from getting broken. It also keeps that edge of your fabric at a nice clean cut so that the serging can cleanly wrap around the edge of your fabric and keep it from fraying. So all that you should cut off with the blade is just maybe the frayed hairs of your fabric. If you have a little bit of fraying that started to happen after you cut, that's really all you should be cutting off. You don't want to cut off any more fabric because then you're going to be shrinking the size of your garment. So as I put it in here, I'm going to put it right in the edge of my fabric, right in line with that blade. And then again, let my machine start to suck it in there. And you can just see little hairs are coming off, but not much more. If I get too close to the blade, it'll actually start to cut off fabric, the body of my fabric. Again, that's bad because then you're shrinking the size of your garment. And if I get too far away from the blade, then I end up with these little loops coming off the end. So these little loops coming off the edge are not good either because those can easily get snagged on something, and the chain stitch will start to unravel and your raw edge will no longer be protected. So you just want your fabric right up against that blade, but not past or not too far away from it. Okay, and then again, we do not pull these threads through, so when I get to the end of my stitch area, instead of pulling out the threads and cutting them off like we do on our single needle, we let the machine run until we have enough of a chain that we can cut off our fabric and leave that chain there for the next person. You'll begin with a chain. So you can see at the beginning of my stitch, I began with a chain. I'll just go ahead, cut that off, and then I've got my finished edge.